What was something that shocked you when you visited a foreign country? Tokyo feels quiet, there's road noise, and the occasional music leaking out of a shop, but people talk under their voices with each other. No honking, no shouting, just this unsettling near silence in an enormous metropolis. Except during elections. I was always shocked at how noisy they were, even though Japan usually has such a low tolerance for noise. As an Englishman visiting Morocco, I was surprised at how many English phrases the locals knew. They got them a bit wrong though sometimes. I went into a shop called Ali's Scouse Tea perfume shop. That was interesting. My favorite sales pitch from a Moroccan restaurant in Marrakesh last year. Come in, no diarrhea here 5 years. 5 years. Needless to say, we carried on walking. Red Solo cups are real. I thought they were just from Hollywood movies due to copyright. Blew my mind when I moved to the US. It's amazing how often I see this on Reddit. I can't think of a single movie featuring these cups because they are just cups to us. I went to the US for college. First thing that really shocked me was the fact that everything was bigger. Doors are wider. Cars are larger. Elevators are bigger. Don't even get me started on the soda cup sizes you can actually purchase. After the whole why is everything huge phase, I went into the phase where I began realizing everything is like in the movies. Toilets had much more water than I was used to. Red Solo cups actually existed. Houses are actually made from cheap wood. 7-Elevens are actually ran by South Asian or East African people. Even just the fact that there was a cabinet behind my bathroom mirror made my whole day when I finally discovered it on a whim. All the small things that everyone just assumes are normal were fascinating to a European who had only ever seen America in movies. For me, I moved to Europe and everything is smaller here. Smaller roads, smaller cars, smaller sidewalks, smaller apartments, denser cities, smaller plates of food, smaller drinks, smaller beers. It's a bit strange, but one thing I'll never get used to is 25 centiliters size beers. Why anyone would make a bottle of beer that small is beyond me, and it's on the exception. It's the normal size, 8 Oz. The community water jug at the office food court in India. 1 jug of water, 1 tin cup everyone shares. Thirsty? Go fill up the cup. Take a drink. Put the cup back. Whoa, that would shock me too. Goa. There was a road that crossed the runway. After the plane landed, trucks, cars, bikes, animals and people flooded across it. Welcome to India. I choose a DVD for tonight. When my Vietnamese guide said yeah, after we won the war, as an American this was the first time I had heard it phrased that way. In school we're taught that our troops just left. We didn't lose, we strategically advanced rearward. Germany, nudity in commercials. The one I'm thinking of came on during prime time on what I think was a broadcast channel. It started with a shot of an alpine lake, and you see a woman swimming toward the shore. She steps out of the lake completely naked, nothing hidden. She walks over to her blanket, lays down, and spreads some butter on a piece of bread. Then it shows you the logo and slogan for the butter. No reason she had to be naked, just trying to sell some butter. In the US you couldn't get away with that in the middle of the night on a cable channel. How trashy Rome was in a very touristy way. Everybody was hawking some kind of selfie stick. Crappy little mass-produced souvenir. Whatever. London and Munich weren't like that at all. Rome was still cool to visit, but it threw me off a little. I visited the US for a month in 2015. I'm from Australia. Firstly, I rarely heard a single bird. It was really weird. I'm used to hearing little flutters or a caw of some kind, but nothing. Also, I saw one fly my entire trip. One fly, and it was tiny. I named him Gerald. Literally every American I met was the nicest person I have ever met. Everyone was so helpful, even the ones I wasn't paying for a service or anything. I didn't meet one rude American, which is nice, considering the world seems to have this idea that America is filled with buttholes. Finally, your seagulls are like twice the size of Australian seagulls. Frick your seagulls. I'm not feeding my fish and chips to your fricking seagulls. They can frick right off, mate. I'd love to know where you were in the US. One hears birds incessantly in the northeast. Skiing in France. A lady's toilet I went into just had a hole in the floor. Trying to squat with ski boots on. on a slippery tiled floor required some serious ninja skills. Is if it of any relief, French people are shocked to see this type of things too. I've never managed to use them. Taiwan. 90% plus of all people depicted in advertisements were the whitest people I've seen. All the models were just like you expect in Abercrombie. There were stunning Asian women on every street but none in the magazines, billboards, or posters. It was surprising and unexpected. It was the same in Hong Kong. All ads were white people. It was really weird. In Mexico, my wife and I took a tour of Chichen Itza, which was cool, but for some reason on the bus ride home they took us through a real Mexican village. It was just some neighborhood. I felt so goddamn dirty. Just a bus full of white people going through and marveling at the tiny clay houses and impoverished brown people. You'd think the longer golden ages would have provided enough gold to improve living conditions. When we got off the beaten path a little in Southeast Asia, I was shocked by how many people wanted their pictures taken with us. I mean, every 30 seconds in some spots, entire extended families asking to pose with us. Some didn't even ask. Some also wanted to touch the hair on my arms to see what it felt like. Apparently, outside of the big towns, they don't see a lot of Westerners, so we just look like people from TV to them, especially my blonde, fashionable daughter. Add red hair to the equation, and the amount of unwanted hair touching is ridiculous. Englishman here. I traveled around China last year with my wife and was amazed about the reaction the locals had towards us. People would just stop and stare, take pictures of us on their phones. The braver ones would ask if they could have a photo with us. We even bumped into a corporate bank photo shoot in Xi'an. I photobombed them for fun and they wouldn't let me leave until they all had pictures of us. The end they started giving me all these freebies. I have no idea what on earth they do with all those pictures of us. One man followed my wife for 20 minutes on the Great Wall. Must have taken 100 plus pictures of her. What a lovely confusing people. They are probably going to use those photos of you to put up in the actual bank or on the website to draw in more customers. White Westerners come to our bank and it's not just because everyone thinks white people are naturally a higher class. It's more reason that China is racially homogeneous and advertising the internationality of your bank raises its perceived value. American in Japan. Right now, I'd heard how absolutely xenophobic the Japanese are, but I'm finding them friendly and very helpful despite the extreme language difference, unlike Europe where I often could puzzle things out. Today I used Google Translate to tell my waitress, who had been very helpful, that the food was excellent and to please tell the chef. Shortly thereafter, when I left, he came out to greet me, and we bowed and smiled to one another. It was a moment. They are very friendly as a tourist. It's when you decide to stay there where you end up experiencing some of the xenophobia. Went to Japan last month. I'm surprised at the sheer convenience of it all. Primarily with buying food and transport. With buying food, most places have some sort of machine that you put your money and your order in. It spits out a ticket and you give it to the waiter. With transport there are route maps everywhere and the trains come in time and in regular intervals. I've never seen that back home. They really figured out convenience. I guess when you're in a tiny island crammed with a bunch of people you try to make things simpler for everyone. It was the US for me when I visited. The manners. People serving you would be all and how are you today, thank you so much. Couldn't do enough for our kids. They have people to pack your bags for you at supermarkets and carry them if you want them to. It was so cheap to eat out, both when I visited with my husband and when we went back with our kids. So cheap, and loads of places had promotions on like kids eat free or something like that. Fantastic value. All of the above obviously probably work on tipping, but when people are so kind, you don't mind in the slightest. The streets were so wide, and so were the pavements, but not many people were walking on them, so even when it was busy, it wasn't, if you see what I mean. I've been to a few places: Orlando, clearly, Kids, Virginia, Maryland and California. Every time was fabulous. Each time I've gone back thinking, well, I'm sure this time I won't be as lucky, but I think luck has nothing to do with it. I think you're very lucky if you live there. Jealous. I'd go back every year if I could afford it. I live in the UK now, but this incident occurred upon my first visit there. Smarties are chocolate. They came in a different container that was larger, so I just assumed they were a larger and differently shaped version of our favorite chalky, sugary candy, but no, they were chocolate. They were essentially misshapen M&Ms. I still haven't gotten over this. They were essentially misshapen M&Ms. Actually, M&Ms are misshapen Smarties. The US government saw the British eating Smarties and realized they solved the problem they had with chocolate given to soldiers as an energy boost. It melted. Smarties, however, didn't, so they set out to copy them. Tokyo, Japan. There are no garbage cans in Tokyo, yet the city is immaculately clean. Everyone keeps their garbage in the bag and takes it home. I did find out why there are no garbage cans in the city. It is the outcome of the sarin nerves gas terrorist attack in a Tokyo subway in 1995. The perpetrators hid the gas cans in garbage cans in the subway and it dissipated, slowly killing 12 people. To prevent future occurrences, everyone agreed to do their part and take their garbage home. I was shocked at the siesta ritual when I visited Spain, specifically in Sevilla. I was expecting it to be a little nap that people took in the middle of the workday, but from my experience it was essentially a 2 or 3 hour lunch break where everyone went to the street cafes, ate food, relaxed, and drank a couple beers before heading back to work for a couple hours. I was pleasantly surprised, to say the least. I could not believe how much people drink in the UK. Like every single social occasion, no matter what age anyone is centered around drinking. At all times of the day, we were out walking around at sunrise and there were people drunk as frick on the sidewalk. I mean, to each their own, but it was pretty shocking. If they're drunk at sunrise, they're probably either still going from the night before, or homeless. I remember moving to China in 1992. I couldn't believe how lively and exuberant the place was, when I was expecting a communist dreary wasteland. When I went to the US, the American flag, literally everywhere. In Australia, if you proudly display the flag, you come across as a bit of an butthole. Why do your toilet stall doors have such large gaps? You can see people from in between the gaps. Isn't that really weird? I don't know about you, but I like my toilet stalls to be closed. Your sweet tea dispensers at fast food places was really cool. I had so much sweet tea. No one smiles. I tried to buy a ticket at a counter from a stony-faced lady and I was terrified. Pop-Tarts do not taste as good as pop culture makes them seem. It made me way too excited. Seeing school kids out of uniform. It's just like the movies. Just off the top of my head, it was pretty bizarre. As an American visiting Germany, I was really surprised that public restrooms cost money to use. Like, what the frick? Why is that a thing? I used to play Roller Coaster Tycoon and make the people pay to use the bathroom as an evil sadistic joke, but Germany actually does that for real. Everything else about Germany was pretty great though. I have a friend who lives in Nicaragua and went to visit him a few years back. While he was showing us the ropes, he mentioned you'll see guys standing outside banks and on the street with stacks of money and calculators who'll offer to exchange currency for you. At that point I'm thinking to myself, of course I wouldn't believe that obvious scam. Then he continued, those guys are actually legit. Exchange your money there. I said really about 20 times before I actually believed him. I knew India would be dirty, but the extent of it still shocked me. The smell of the air is so thick and pungent. You cannot see the sky through a thick haze of pollution in larger cities. Trash. Everywhere. Everywhere. Pouring into rivers. On the sides of streets. Outside of shops. Etc. And it was weird because many piles of trash were just hundreds of the exact same item. India is absolutely gorgeous though, and the dirtiness by no means will prevent me from loving it and returning one day soon. That's the scene in cities, but I live in the middle of nowhere here and it's amazing. Way better than the city life. Some problems with stuff like textbooks and all, but way better than being in a city. England. They sell Strongbow in 2-liter bottles made from troublingly thin plastic. Iceland. They really don't expect to see them roll around in the winter. Every nationality's crap smells different. It's awful going to the public bathrooms the first couple weeks you're in a new country. Women's bathrooms in India are literally suffocating. I just do not understand. As an Australian visiting the United States, seeing commercials ads for medicine healthcare services on television, Also the huge numbers of homeless beggars in every city I pranced by, from Vegas to Washington. As an Australian visiting Quebec in winter, I used the restroom at a ski resort and left with my hands still a little wet. They froze within 30 minutes. Suffered mild frostbite and permanently lost all feeling in my pinky. As an Australian in parts of Europe, was busting to take a crap at one point. Every single public restroom had a man or woman sitting near door charging money for entry. No euros. You crap your pants. As an Australian in Hong Kong, no public toilets. Stray too far from hotel or restaurant. You crap your pants. As an Australian in China, public toilet on every corner, in every direction. Wherever you look, toilet on top of toilet. But they are covered in pee. Impossible to squat sit without getting pee on your pants or shoes. So you just swim in pee, go back to hotel or crap your pants. As an Australian in Australia, deadliest animal on earth, wrapped itself around my toe, blue-ringed octopus. There is no cure, you lose ability to breathe, unless in vicinity of iron lung. Dead in 20 minutes. I crap my pants. Crap your pants. I think if you invest in a diaper, your international traveling experience may increase by roughly 100%. Istanbul for Ramadan, Ramazan there. I knew about the fasting no water from sunrise to sunset thing, but once the sun went down, crazy partying, drinking, feasting everywhere, spilling into the streets. Very cool. When I was in Istanbul, Turkey, I was really shocked by all the soldiers patrolling the streets. I obviously have seen cops carrying guns before, but these soldiers were packing some serious heat. They had large guns which I assumed were automatic or semi-automatic. The most shocking part was not the guns though, but the fact that everyone was so calm and relaxed around them. You could tell who was a tourist and who was a native by the way the hordes of people walked past the armed soldiers. The tourists would comment and run very quickly or just stand there and stare at them. The local people took no mind of them and continued on their way. Though intimidating at first, by the third day I was there I felt comfortable with them around, and it actually was nice knowing that if something were to happen, that the city would be prepared and protect the people. I'm sure this is common practice in other countries too, but this was the first time I had seen this on such a massive scale. Shocked by all the soldiers patrolling the streets. Now go to Colombia where you'll see 18 and 19-year-olds doing their compulsory military service, clowning around pointing their major weaponry at each other. The soldiers were virtually all polite, kind, and so on, but it still felt like they just handed a bunch of high-grade weapons to some bored kids. Visited Iceland recently. The lack of safety rails and rules around natural attractions. You could climb to the edge of a waterfall without anyone stopping you, and if there was an unsafe area it was usually blocked by a tiny rope a foot off the ground. Exploration and the experience seemed to be encouraged as long as you didn't disrupt the environment and used common sense. Also no guardrails on steep gravel mountain roads. Yeah, this shocked me when I went to Iceland too. They told me that if you're dumb enough to go up to the edge without proper safety then it's only your fault. No reason to be putting up so many guardrails and such, and ruining the beauty of the place. To be honest, I concur. I got sent to Colombia as a kid to learn Spanish for a year. My parents are from there so I have family there. For a 9-year-old kid who was born and raised in America, a lot of WTF moments occurred for me. I remember buying a Coke one day and drinking it from the bottle and walking away. The guy stopped me and told me I couldn't leave with the bottle. Then he poured my soda into a Ziploc bag and gave me a straw. Apparently then they were big on recycling bottles. Also, when I attended school everyone called me the Puerto Rican because my Spanish really sucked then. I had to wear a little jacket and tie, which was strange. I attended private school so I was used to wearing uniforms, but not a jacket and tie. I also found it weird that at that particular school you stayed in a classroom all day while the teachers rotated, unlike the other way around. My first big trip around the world was in Germany when I was 18 years old. Leaving the airport bus to board the U-Bahn in Berlin, I saw several neatly dressed businessmen drinking beer casually from a bottle on the street before entering the station. It was happy hour and they were having fun. I was pleasantly shocked. I'm German and for us one beer is like an adult soda or something. We even have a saying about beer that goes something like one is none. I don't mim though, especially during summer. I love drinking a cold beer at noon and no one thinks it's weird. Being drunk at those hours though, it's generally looked down upon also. All the candy shops in Canada. It was like stepping into the world of Willy Wonka. Nestle, everywhere. Here the brand is only associated with Crunch bars. Up north it's ice cream and practically everything. No hiding behind shill corporations in Canada. As a Canadian I am not really sure what you mean at all. Maybe I am just used to it. Having been to an American family home as a Brit for the first time, there's an industrial grade food destroying blender living in the sink. That means you let food run down the drain, going completely against all the rules your parents set about washing up. Everyone puts massive serving plates on the table, and no one is expected to finish their plates. I got through a steak and as soon as I had finished up my host got up, and very delighted that people liked his steaks, started grilling more. Being British I felt so bad he had gone to the trouble unnecessarily. I started eating that as well. Eventually we had to talk about it. Do not try to clean your plate in America, Britons. This nation has freaking stocked up. They don't mess about with portion size either. I always thought root beer was some kind of fake cartoon beer that it was acceptable for children cartoon characters to drink on TV for the censors. Turns out it's actually a kind of soda. I have a few. All dated, of course, but there you go. I was young and impressionable. 1987. I went to France with a school trip. We had dinner one night at a place that served pizza. They put an egg on it. Shudder. Gross to my 17-year-old American self. 30 years later I do not find that all that odd or gross at all. But I remember being completely shocked. Egg on a pizza? Why would you ruin a perfectly good pizza that way? 1990 or 1991. I visited Thailand on a grant. We were driven many places, and spent time in Bangkok and Chiang Mai, and visited many other parts of the country. I remember going past a construction site. The scaffolding was bamboo, and it went up many feet, maybe 50-60 feet, maybe higher. The construction workers were largely barefoot, had no safety helmets, no harnesses, nothing. I kept thinking WTF, they could plummet to their deaths at any moment. I had never seen anything like that. At a local market in Chiang Mai, there were elephants. They used them to haul pineapples down to the market from the hills. That kinda shocked me too. Don't they have trucks? I'm sure you can see the thread running behind this. A lower middle class kid manages to get a grant and go to Thailand, and discovers that in fact, he's the equivalent of wealthy and pampered when he sees what money is like in rural Thailand. I'd never seen fried wasps and crickets either. That was a new one on me. Shocked the heck out of me. TBH. That trip changed my life. My whole outlook on the world was changed. For the better. First time I went to Mexico. The traffic was terrifying but awesome. It's the type of driving you would get a ticket for in the US. Story time. Went to Dominican Republic with my husband, who is from there, for our honeymoon. Our resort offered these ATV tours and so we went with another American couple we had met earlier. Our tour guide didn't speak English, so my husband was translating whenever we got to a different stop on the tour. We get to this deep hole, kind of like a waterfall that was no longer a waterfall, and the guide is describing it, so we all look to my husband to translate. He looked really nervous and hesitant until he finally goes. He says this is where they used to bring tourists in the 50s, rob them, kill them and then drop their bodies down the hole. It's a shame because it's so beautiful, and the guy wasn't even joking or aware that this is a really scary thing to say to American tourists, just went on with his job. For Denmark. 1. Many people at the airport in Copenhagen, particularly Starbucks, spoke flawless English with a West Coast accent. 2. I knew Danish women were usually attractive, but dang, it hits you like a brick wall when you finally go and visit. 3. I kinda figured Danish people would be more reserved like most of the Europeans I'd met. However, people were exceedingly nice. I had to ask for directions to a hostel because my phone wouldn't pull it up, and a couple in their early 20s literally walked with me for the mile or two it took to find it. I wound up buying them coffee at a cafe down the street. After traveling Denmark, Germany, Austria and Italy, I couldn't help but feel that getting back on the plane going home was the wrong idea. Everything about Europe seemed, and still seems, better than how things run in the US. Then come to the UK and see just how crappy Europe can be. The poverty and all-around lifestyle difference in Philippines and other sea countries. I wish I was a trillionaire and can provide the aid people in the world need, or if most governments got off their butt and helped their people. The idea that in the Philippines people ration their power by not doing simple things like boiling the kettle so they could watch Pacquiao fight really struck a chord with me. In almost every grocery store in Finland, no matter how small, they have a recycling point for all your bottles and cans. That actually pays you. The more you recycle, collect your cans and bottles for a few months, then go buy a load of free groceries. Amazing, convenient, and way ahead of the US. The lack of guardrails, warning signs, safety procedures, liability waivers and similar measures in countries where people do not sue each other as much as in North America. It's funny because I often realize how you can just walk around unaware in Canada, US, because someone has made sure everything is safe, that is, moron proof, for you, and how quickly you'd break your ankle or fall off a cliff anywhere else if you don't pay attention. I went to India and stayed in a village for a few months and I was banned from entering this old man's house because I had eaten dinner with a lower caste than his. I visited the US at the age of about 12. One of the things that just blew my mind was the size of the portions. I ordered a plate of nachos for about $8 thinking it would be a nice entree dish type thing. I wasn't very hungry so that was all I needed. Instead I got this colossal plate that was almost as big as my torso. My mum ended up sharing my plate instead of getting her main. The second point is probably a product of the first. We decided to visit the mall across from our hotel. It was probably about a 200-meter walk across the car park so we left the restaurant to walk across. As we were leaving, my mum overheard two very large ladies' conversation. 1. Should we go across to the mall? 2. Ooh yes, I'd love to check out what's new at Victoria's Secret. My mum was thinking to herself would they fit anything from Versus? And part of the reason for their girth became apparent when they hopped in their cars to drive across the car park to the mall. I ordered a plate of nachos for about $8 thinking it would be a nice entree dish type thing. In the US, entree refers to the main course. Also, oftentimes appetizers are designed to be shared. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.